Sí,
So, first off, can everyone at the back hear okay? And they're nodding. Excellent. So there's still people coming in. Maybe a row which has a little gap in the middle, but the ends are blocked, so you could shuffle. And that way, if we have anyone coming late, they'll be able to just sneak in and grab a seat. That's awesome. Thank you. Nice one. So, thank you so much for coming, especially as the nights are drawing in and it's starting to get a little cold and wet. It's really, really reassuring to see so many people come out. Thank you for your support. I also owe the biggest thank you here to Jessica, who's travelled a really, really long way to see us, and has been so generous to our campaign, considering everything that we're going to hear about tonight. Can we just give a round of applause to Jessica? So she's going to speak for somewhere between an hour and a half-ish, not that long. And then we'll go straight into questions. So please take the opportunity while we have Jessica and her experience here to ask if you have anything that you want to know. We're not going to have a break. So if you need to use the loos, which are downstairs, or if you want to stretch or a bit of air, go ahead and we won't be offended. Just a couple more things. So there's a lot of paperwork floating around tonight. First of all, Jonathan Porritt is coming to Lady Lumley's School on Thursday the 19th. And you can buy tickets from Mr. Elliott, who is there. If anybody wants to...
Free.
Oh, they're free. You can get a ticket from him. Another couple of really important pieces of paper. One titled Objection to Planning Application. In the anti-fracking movement we talk about solidarity a lot, and if you've looked at my map of Northern England on the back, you will see that actually we're all living in what would become the Great Northern Gas Fields. So this application is for a well that they want to put in Cheshire. I know when we were fighting the application at KMA, having the support of people from all over the country was really important. And at this point, being able to say, you know, actually we said no to that well is so powerful. So it's really important if anyone wants to fill out their objection to fracking in Cheshire, because after all, we're not just against fracking here in Pickering or in Kirby Miskerton. It's against fracking across the country. You also have here an opportunity to sign a declaration for a frack-free UK. And this has been a long process to create a declaration that we hope people will be able to agree to unilaterally, whatever your position, and also will apply to local groups, organisations, businesses, all of whom have an interest in keeping the UK frack-free. So please take these, go and spread them around, get all your neighbours to sign them, and we've got a box at the back where we're collecting all of the paperwork if you want to leave it with us. So I will leave you to it, but just one more thought. I was down at the well site earlier today. It was quite an exciting day. And I was talking to a journalist, and he said, well, you know, you're 3 weeks in now, and it looks like, you know, interest isn't peaking, is it? They're still interested. And I said, no, that's not right. We're 3 years in now, and we are stronger than ever. Unfortunately, we all have to do this. Because I know for myself, and most of the other people in the audience, I'm sure, we'd all rather be at home with our families or doing other things, no offence. But actually, in coming here tonight, we are doing what needs to be done to make sure that we keep Rydale, Yorkshire and the UK frack-free. And that is really great, so thank you. is just to say there are a ton of posters and leaflets and stickers at the back of the room. If your wheelie bin does not have a sticker, it's going to be left out. So put one on. If you like what you hear today, take one of the green leaflets and give it to your neighbour, give it to a colleague or someone who hasn't talked about fracking, and see if we can get the conversation going, and step by step, we're going to win. Thank you guys.
Well, hello, what a journey to get here. I panicked so badly I'm going to miss a train or go the wrong way or take the wrong plane, but here I am. There was an incredible amount of work that was put into organizing this, including from you, to be here and fill the house. So I think you need to give yourselves a round of applause, and to all the people who worked so hard to distribute the pamphlets, do the posters, the artwork, and convincing me to come. Because Dr. Tim Thornton asked me years ago to come, and I was too tired. So a round of applause, please. It's a hard talk. I'm going to go pretty fast, but there's time to ask questions later. As I go through my story, I want you to think about how much abuse of power is occurring to cover up the pollution caused by hydraulic fracturing. This is an image of one of the frack fields northwest of Fox Creek, Alberta, home of the world record 4.8 magnitude earthquake caused directly by hydraulic fracturing. And underneath that is our Constitution, our Charter of Rights and Freedoms. It has been fracked, as your Magna Carta has been because of hydraulic fracturing. I've worked in the industry a long time, and I thought we had regulations. And I thought we had regulators. We don't. We hear all over the world, wherever they want to frack, it's a big competition. We have the best regulations in the world. Isn't that right? You do. Gentlemen, sir, you're saying you have the best. No, I do. In Canada, we have the best. We're the most environmentally clean country in the world, right? With those tar sands. Gold standard. World class. But for whom? Is it for us and our water, our children, our health, our communities, our historic resources? No. I believe it's for the companies. It's to enable the polluters. Rosebud is a tiny little theatre and arts community about 100 kilometers northeast of Calgary. It's exquisitely beautiful. Beauty made me fall in love with the place and move there. And it's really hard to talk about because it's fracked. As hard as it is to watch how upset your community was today at the gate. There are a number of parties in my lawsuit. I'm suing the water regulator, the energy regulator, and one oil and gas company named Encana. Every time the regulators in Alberta get caught breaking the law or doing something terrible in the press and it's reported, the government changes their spots, changes their names. I will mostly talk about the water regulator as Alberta Environment. After my lawsuit went public, the government took all of the fresh water that goes to the oil and gas industry and put it under the oil and gas industry's control under the energy regulator. This is absolutely horrific. The Energy Resources Conservation Board changed names lots of times. It's broken the law. It's been caught breaking the law. It has spied on innocent citizens, cookie-making grandmothers, attending meetings. And after my lawsuit went public, the government changed it to the energy regulator. We have the Research Council also involved, supposed to meet top science needs, but their website at the time of their involvement in my case stated right on it that they were meeting the priorities of industry. And Canada changed its name too. It sold out its old riches, oil riches, to Cenovus. My lawyers and I believe to protect the oil riches from my lawsuit. So Cenovus is really in Canada. It's one and the same. They're legally different companies. And the Alberta Research Council, it too changed names. When I exposed some dirty stuff about them, they changed names. Very hard to keep track of. Industry has known for decades that their well bores are leaking. And not only are they leaking methane, ethane, other hydrocarbons, but these leaking hydrocarbons are contaminating groundwater. Another group you'll need to know about in my talk is the Canadian Association of Petroleum Producers. Their acronym is CAP. They did a big multi-year study in the 90s, admitting that fresh groundwater was being contaminated by leaking energy wells. Has your regulator here told you that it's been proven and documented that the oil and gas industry wellbores are leaking and contaminating groundwater? Me neither. I found this because of research, and I bought the report, and after I bought it and started talking about it, geologists involved in the study said to me, Jess, how did you get that study? It's supposed to be confidential. I said, I didn't break any laws. I bought it. I phoned them. I said, can I have a copy of this report? And I paid $88 for it. And when I saw what they admitted in it, I really started researching. Let's start with some history. In 1986, my water well was drilled, and on the record it said, gas present, no. I blew that up for you. Gas present, no. At the time of the new experiments, the brute force fracking, most of the water wells in Alberta had no methane present. The records, most of them said gas present, no. Less than 0.2% had a gas present that could be methane. Try to remember that. Natural gas does occur naturally in water wells. It's usually at very low levels. It does not dramatically change. Dr. Carlos Mullenbachs at the University of Alberta, who is considered the king of isotopic fingerprinting of hydrocarbons that get into water wells from leaking energy well bores, he says that microbial gas doesn't produce ethane. That's a really key important part of my story. The CAP baseline study found most of the water wells contaminated with methane naturally had very low levels below, dissolved levels below 1 milligram per liter. And in the 90s, in this report, there was a statement that there's a risk of explosion at 1 milligram per liter dissolved in water if that water passes a confined space, which we all have in our homes or our barns, community halls and schools. There was a regulator study. They found most of the water wells they looked at had no methane or ethane in them, and the two that did, it looked like industry had contaminated them from the fingerprinting. Dr. Bernard Meyer is another researcher on this, and he said most of the time there's no free gas present in water wells. All of us with contaminated water wells after fracking in Alberta have free gas in our water wells. I moved to my property in 1998. That's the Rosebud River behind me, the old riverbed. I hired a hydrogeologist to also look at historic records, but in my community only. Look at that, almost the same percentage. Before they began the experimental fracking, the same percentage of water wells had gas present historically, less than 0.2%. Our Ministers of the Environment in Canada held a very important workshop in 2002. This was never really made public. And they said in it that unconventional oil and gas drilling poses a real threat to quality and quantity of our water. Doesn't matter what geology, doesn't matter what community, doesn't matter what continent or country or religion or education level. Real threat. And we need baseline hydrogeological studies to track these contaminants and monitor them and determine them. Instead of that happening, when I went public with this report and started talking about it, this council removed their report. So I uploaded it to my website to keep it public. And Encana fractured directly into our drinking water aquifers, repeatedly, in secret. This is the well that they fractured into our drinking water aquifers, down here. This is the Rosebud River Valley. My water well and land is down here. And the hamlet of about 100 people is over here. These are grain elevators. We're a big grain country. My fracked life, however, began with noise, an incredible amount of noise. And Canada continues to violate my legal right to quiet enjoyment of my home, even with my lawsuit. Best in the world regulations only protect the noise polluter. But my neighbor came to me and said, Jess, my water well went bad after some Encana wells, And they want to do more fracking on, or not fracking, we didn't know they were fracking yet. They want to drill more wells on my farm. You better get your well tested. And lucky for me, I asked Encana and they happily agreed, they did. They came and tested my water, otherwise I really would have no lawsuit. Here's the results here. It says, you can't read it, but my name is here, Encana. I will post these slides on my website when the tour is over, so all of these slides and all the information on here will be available to you. After I went public with Encana breaking the law and contaminating my community's drinking water supply, Encana lies to the press and on their website and says, I refuse to cooperate and will not let them test my water well. Their own data proves them a liar. So I blew up the important part. Appearance clear. My water now pours like milk because there's so much gas in it. And there's also cattle producers' water in Quebec after shale gas drilling before they began fracking. Just from the drilling, half of the wells they drilled were leaking methane. The regulator ordered them to fix the leaks and they failed. And one of the cattle producers has water that pours like milk. This is the energy regulator's data that Encana filed with them on the well that fracked our aquifers. The intensity of this industry, the fracking, comes with a phenomenal cumulative impact underground as well as above ground. The casings are already leaking to a great degree. And they don't know how to fix it. They've tried for decades to fix it, but they don't know how to fix it. Now they're going to come. This is 24 zones underground, including the most shallow into the fresh water. 13 shots per zone. They explode through them with perforations with which then to inject the frac fluids. Incredible cumulative impact. This is the water well database. This is the water regulator's database. Encana intentionally fractured our drinking water aquifers. They posted this as the zones they had perforated, and below on the data they said, we're going to frack this. And then water wells started to go bad. These are the first water wells that went bad. This is my water well. I have my water wells over here. This is the well that fractured our 2 freshwater aquifers. I didn't know this because I was working for Encana at the time. I've worked almost 30 years in this industry. I was very busy working up north. And Encana's manager at the time, Mark Taylor, who now sits on the executive of the regulator, that's his photo you see there. I hear hissing. Yeah, it's incredible. He looked us in the face at a community meeting like this. There were over 200 people there, many farmers. And he said, oh, no, you don't have to worry about your water, just like they're telling you here. There's 0 chance of contamination. It'll never happen. It has never happened. We're going to only frack way below your drinking water supply. Not only that, we will be way below the cap rock, the impermeable layer, so we prevent gas from migrating into the groundwater. And then they promised a little bit of money to one tiny part of the community, which divided and conquered the community. When they start offering you money, say no. Say thank you very much. Yes, our football team needs new jerseys. I don't know what you call them. We need new boots, new shoes. We're going to do a bake sale. We're going to raise our own money. Thank you very much. It's very kind of you. Third Energy. Or whichever. Quadrilla, well, thank you. No, thank you. We'd rather raise our own money. We take care of our own. We love our communities, and will take care of us. We don't need your money. Because once they give you the money, or once one part of you starts to accept the money, they have you. Because people can't help it. Right? Competition and jealousy, and why did you get the money and you didn't? You're taller. Our water tower blew up in an explosion, very serious. Just about killed our water manager. I have my own private water well. The hamlet relies on municipal water wells. There was an investigation and accumulation of gases caused this explosion. What is the purpose of the new brute force hydraulic fracturing? Who knows? The purpose is to force these reluctant, unconventional hydrocarbons to let go. Yes, it's fracking, but to be a little bit more specific, fracking is forcing unconventional oil and gas to release from the formations that these hydrocarbons are tightly absorbed to. They don't want to let go. It's a big love. They will not naturally let go. So they have to come in with massive frac company crews to force the methane to let go. My water dramatically changed. I was getting incredibly painful burns to my skin. The damage to my face still hasn't recovered. It got a lot better, but my taps began whistling like a train coming. It was driving me crazy. I made a terrible mistake. I figured out I could put a hairpin in the bathtub spout, and it eases the noise all night long. But now the gas was really blowing into my house, but I didn't know. And I'm a scientist who was working in the industry at the time. There was so much gas spurting water out of my toilet and my bathtub, so much gas in the water, it was forcing the water in the bathtub to wet the floor and wet the edge of the tub. It was forcing the same water in the toilet to wet the toilet seat. I didn't know what was happening. And it wasn't until one day I poured fresh water for my dogs, and there was a great big white cloud of smoke off the water, and they both backed away from my water in revulsion, growling. And it hit me. They've been lying to us. There's something wrong with the water. This is my water. It is not photoshopped. I no longer show the press my water in the house because that flame on that day shot right to the ceiling. I'm a blur because it scared me so bad, and I had been doing this a few times. I sent a lot of documented evidence to the regulator, the best in the world regulator. Remember, our regulator in Canada is much better than anybody else's in the world. And instead of them enforcing the regulations and the laws that Encana had broken, they tried to intimidate me into silence, and they regulated me. They lied and deregulated to constantly match Encana's non-compliance. They do this with other companies too. They're very arrogant and quite a bit stupid. There's no other way to say it. They violated my charter rights, and they put it in writing and signed a letter to this. Yeah, it's not very smart, but they're so arrogant. And they put in the letter that they judged me a criminal. No trial, no evidence whatsoever. I was never arrested. And they said they were going to get the Attorney General involved. They copied the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, their EUB Security and Surveillance Branch. And then 6 months later, they tried to get evidence after the fact. They put in their letter, criminal threats will not be tolerated. But I was never fingerprinted. Still not to this day. There were other women in Alberta. 3 blood tribe women in the south of Alberta stood up in front of the massive frac crews with signs about this big. And they were charged with criminal intimidation, arrested, fingerprinted, thrown in jail overnight. The Crown later dropped the charges. And Kimberly Mildenstein, a mother of 3 boys who was terrified for the safety of her boys, because not only can we not get the regulators to enforce our laws to protect us and our water, the RCMP and the police will not enforce the traffic laws if you're a frac company breaking the law. So she got angry, she wrote a threat in writing to the regulator, and she got arrested and charged, and so did her husband, who was working as a bank manager. He was working, he didn't even know what she had done, but he got arrested too and fingerprinted. Weibo Ludwig, who was up in northern Alberta, he was very concerned about sour gas, hydrogen sulfide, poisoning his family, farm, and livestock, and he raised many, many concerns. When he died, our police tried to get access to his corpse, to fingerprint his corpse, but they never bothered to fingerprint me. I'm not the only one. This is Dale Zimmerman, a rancher. It is miserable to haul water when it's 30 below in Canada. His water contaminated with much more methane and ethane in it than I have. The government knew they had failed us. They ordered, in the legislature, they ordered that we would all get safe water, all impacted families, now and into the future, regardless of whether nature did it or not. And then they finally come and test my water, but they had already known for over a year that Encana had broken the law and that water wells were starting to go bad. This is Leslie Miller. She was a trainee with Alberta Environment, no experience testing gas and water. And the reason the regulators use inexperienced people is because when they give them bad sampling instructions, they won't argue. They don't want to lose their future career. So what did she do? Well, when I'm taking samples here, I didn't trust the regulator, so I took duplicates. When she took the methane sample, she left the vial open for quite a long time. Methane quickly dissolves in water, so it went up into the atmosphere. My samples got 3 times the methane of hers. Then and on that day, in the barn, I should go back, the barn is where my well is. A supervisor had been, or an inspector who had been with the regulator for a long time, was testing the water level in the barn, and this is the production. And he told me to my face, there's something really serious with your water well, but you don't have cattle, right, Jessica? So you're to blame for the contamination because you don't use enough water. I only have I have two little border collie, at the time, 2 little Jack Russell border collie dogs and me. And 3 days later, we have an emergency meeting with the regulator, the Minister of Environment, his hydrogeological staff. Dale Zimmerman was there, one of my neighbors, a witness, and they blamed us for causing the contamination for using too much water. That's best in the world science. And then there's blame nature fraud. Before I went public, I never heard that all the water wells, or most of the water wells in Alberta, were naturally contaminated with dangerous levels of methane. After I went public with the evidence, suddenly all over in the press, the politicians, the companies insist that almost all the water wells in Alberta are contaminated with methane. Do you remember the historic results I showed you at the beginning? Less than 0.2. My community, less than 0.2. This is my community, this is my water well, this is where the water tower blew up, this is the hamlet. The red dots are the wells where Encana fractured where the freshwater zones are. They told us, this is before April 2006, they told us to our face that they would never do this. It's not just one well, it's 200. The solid red dots, they fractured less than 200 meters below the surface. They are fracking insanely shallow, and not just in my community, elsewhere. I wanted the regulators to test the hamlet water because our water tower had blown up. People were living in explosive risk. The regulator didn't want to. I compelled them to. They knew in April of 2006, but I did not find out until 2 years later via Freedom of Information searches. They had data proving Encana the guilty party. They never told any of us. They never regulated Encana. Some of the chemicals found in the hamlet water, some of these are man-made. Hexavalent chromium. In my water, the chromium went up by a factor of 45 times after they fracked the aquifers. Because I have that wonderful data by Encana from 2003, before they fracked the aquifer that supplies my well. And then the tests by the regulator after the fracking. After this, Encana used to willingly test people's water wells for metals. They refuse to now. They don't want anyone to have this kind of data. And then the government brought in baseline testing. They're doing this in many places. They're doing this in Quebec, New York. They wait till the fracking contaminates the water, and then they start doing baseline testing and call it baseline testing, so that this way they can blame nature. This is the Bruce Jack water. He has even more methane and ethane than any of us. There was so much gas in his water. This is his water shooting out of his well after he vented the gas out the roof of his pump house on instructions from the water regulator. He tried for years to get responsible action, and it took him 2 years to get 2 industry gas and water testers to come. They came, he turned his well on, and his well ignited, the methane ignited, his well blew up, and all 3 men were in hospital a long time, Bruce Jack for a month. He had to give up his cattle because he couldn't take care of them anymore. This hurts. He was almost killed, and the day before this happened, an 8-year-old girl was standing in front front of the pump house. This is what happened to grown men. Canada-wide, there's no testing required for the chemicals injected. When you ask for the chemicals, don't just ask for frac chemicals. The chemicals used in drilling and servicing and cementing and acidizing are often much more toxic. We've done ourselves a gross disservice by only asking for the frac chemicals. You must ask for all chemicals injected. The Research Council chair, who had no science background, he wrote a briefing note before he even got involved. The Research Council was retained, but a year later. And in his briefing note, he said they're going to blame nature, they're going to blame bacteria for our contamination, and we wouldn't like it. This was sent to the Minister of Environment in Ontario, the Energy Minister in Alberta. Ontario has a serious gas problem in water wells from leaking energy wells. And one thing that's being ignored, there's many published papers coming out now on this very serious pollution problem. And most of the researchers, if not all of them, except one or two, are ignoring that companies are fracking the biogenic methane. They're fracking so shallow, they're fracking what they're calling the naturally occurring biogenic methane made by bacteria. So they're blaming us for the gas that the companies are fracking for. What's the purpose of fracking again? It's to force the methane to let go. And Canada fractured our drinking water aquifers. They forced all that methane to move into our water and into our wells. Here's Kevin Pilger. He was an inspector with the regulator for 20 years. He's testing Debbie Signer's water well, no surgical gloves. He didn't sterilize his equipment. And on this testing day, they found no E. coli. I said to Kevin, while he was there, are you going to look at the data of Encana's perforations and fractures? I've got copies of Encana data proving they fractured at 121 meters below the surface on the valley top. So your villages are down here and your moors are up here, and they're fracking on the moors. So when they come down to where their person fracks are, they'll be in line with your water wells, if they frack as shallow as Encana did. He said, no, we can't look at the data you have, Jess, because Encana promised us they only fractured deeper than 600 meters. The map I showed you, 200 wells were in the freshwater zones, but the regulator refused to look at it. So I said to him, well then, don't look at the data I have. Go to the energy regulator. Oh no, we can't do that, Jess, because you broke in and you altered all of Encana's data. I have to use one of these because I have bad hands. And I think the hand problems came from bathing in frack water and breathing the fumes before I knew what was going on. So one of the positives about being fracked is when you get fracked, you turn into Wonder Woman and you can scale this heavily secure building, break in with one punch, haul in 2 big frack tanker truck loads full of whiteout, and spend in one night 10 lifetimes to alter all of Encana's wells. So I said, well, look at that report that Encana did when the wells started to go bad. No, we can't look at that report because you made it up. I said, well, I couldn't have made it up. It has 2 signatures on it by the hydrogeologist. It has a professional seal. You forged those. And it gets better. We have Richardson ground squirrels. These we call them gophers. And this is what I call the, we have children in the audience, so I'm going to let you read that. I won't say it out loud. But this is the gopher, can I say that word with children here? Yeah? Gopher shit, gopher feces. Are you okay with that? Yeah? Okay. I don't think Kevin Pilger was smart enough to come up with this idea. I think Encana helped him or the regulator. It's terrible. So the first testing on the Signer water well, no E. coli. They never found E. coli in my water well. But Kevin comes back on a very hot, humid day. Debbie Signer's well was new, so the grass hadn't fully grown around. There was lots of gopher shit around her water well. Her neighbors had come to witness the sampling. They'd been in the corrals with the cattle. Dogs were walking around. And Kevin rested his sampling equipment in and out of the mud and the gopher feces back into the well with a rope. He didn't sterilize any of this. You're not supposed to use a rope to sample. You're supposed to use a chain so you can sterilize it. And after this, they found E. coli in her water and used that one bad sampling set to discredit all of the people in Alberta with contaminated water. We were dirty water well owners. And then the interrogation to try to get evidence after the fact by the energy regulator lawyer. I was never so terrified in my life. It was grueling and awful. He tried to get me to admit to crimes I have not committed, but he admitted. I tape recorded this. I asked permission to. And he says right on the tape, they never considered me a threat or a criminal. This is a very serious problem, gas migration. The experts and the regulators get together all around the world regularly. I read these reports, and in their second one, they actually state this: there is clearly a problem with wellbore integrity in existing oil and gas production wells worldwide. The Abistad explosions, do you remember those? Horrific. Do you know that there were old energy oil and gas wells within gas migrating distance to that they refused to look at in their reviews? Massive lawsuit, massive loss of life, massive loss of infrastructure in your country. Why would they refuse to look at the old energy wells that are probably leaking? This is the methane we have in our water, 30 to 110 milligrams per liter. The testing on most of the water wells was so badly done that the later research thinks we have 3 times the lower level. CAP said 1 milligram per liter is risk of explosion. The big oil and gas lobby group has testified to a parliamentary committee. I testified there too. And he says, if we find methane in water wells, we presume it's naturally occurring. Of course, all methane is naturally occurring. We haven't figured out how to make it yet. Even landfill gas, right? That's a process. It's natural, breakdown. But what's not natural are the cracks, the perforations, the well bores, the earthquakes. And they also know, this is very important, this slide, this is the energy regulator put this out in 2007. Most of the wells don't leak from the deeper zones, which is why these guys can say we're going to blame bacteria. Most of the energy wells leak up here, higher potential for leakage. This is where the biogenic gas is, the bacteriological gas. So therefore, they're making that leak into our water and blaming us for it. And they've known this for years, 10 years. There's monitoring fraud. After our water was contaminated, after our water tower blew up, they drilled monitoring wells. Here's one of them, right here, right in the hamlet. There was no water in this water monitoring well. There was only methane and ethane. So much of it that blue handle was vibrating. I took this picture. I couldn't believe it. Then they did lab switch fraud. They already knew, by Dr. Carlos Mullenbach's fingerprinting, that Encounter was the guilty party. So they still had my water well to test and some others, and they switched to the University of Calgary, which is largely controlled by oil and gas money, and also has a much less accurate mass spec. So to do the fingerprinting of the ethane, they need much more of it. So basically, they can't fingerprint the ethane. The most important contaminant in our water is the ethane. We didn't trust this, so we asked for duplicates. It's not very complicated. I'm just going to go through this very quickly. These are the ethane fingerprints before the lab switch. This is after. These are the ones we sent the duplicates to Dr. Mullenbach's. This is the regulator study, very close match to ours. Out of those 200 Encounter wells, they only sampled 1 that had fracked the freshwater zones. But it matches our ethane. No wonder they're engaging in fraud. So then the Research Council gets retained. I have seen some bad things in my career, but I have never seen anything as bad as hydraulic fracturing for oil and gas. And I know from working in the industry, the only thing the regulators and the industry will even pay any attention to is money and the law. And they pay attention to the law because they learn how to bend it. So I find lawyers. It was a grueling process to find lawyers, and they tell me a few things that devastated me. First of all, I would most likely never see justice, neither would our water. It'll cost me 10 to 12 years of my life, and $1 million minimum. I'm selling everything to pay for this lawsuit, because you and your children and the children in my community and our water is that important that I'm willing to give up everything I have. I've already lost my career for speaking out. And it gets worse too. They tell me that even if I win, and you have this in your legal system too, because we Canadians copied your legal system, because I refuse to gag and settle out of court, water doesn't belong to me. Water moves. Water moves a long way. They want to frack limestone here. They are crazy. They want to frack limestone in Western Australia. They're absolutely mad. Water moves faster in limestone. Water moves. I do not have the right to gag and take money for contamination in my water well. So I will not gag or settle. So if I am offered more money to gag and settle and I say no and the court awards me less than I was offered out of court, even if I win, I have to pay my legal fees and the defendant's legal fees, and so do you. So if one of your magnificent row of cottages, your beautiful historic buildings or churches, crumble one day in a frack quake, you go right ahead and try to do what I'm doing. I hope you do, but I'm just letting you know. It's a very hard road. My dog Bandit was killed. Journalists phoned in frantic saying, "Jess, you've got to get out of there, you're next." I loved this dog more than I've ever loved anything in my life. It just about killed me. And I was working with lawyers, madly trying to meet our statute of limitations. And they said to me, "Jess, if you want to give up, we totally understand. Get another dog." I said, "Oh God, I can't get another dog." I couldn't even look at his brother. It broke me so badly. But I realized, no, he wouldn't want me to give up. You can't give up when it's the worst, when it's the absolute worst, like what is happening to you now. That's the time you gather everything up. All your courage, your imagination, your letter writing skills, your pie making skills, carpentry, whatever skills you know you have. All of us, we all have something nobody else has. And you start doing what needs to be done to protect what's yours. And you protect what you love. It's all about love. There is nothing else. So we filed my statement of claim and kept going. And then there's Fracked Academics. I read this, I'm grieving. Oh man, I just couldn't believe this. I thought I'm doing this to protect water and people. And a law prof, a professor at the University of Calgary, smears me in a technical policy paper called Enemies of the State and publishes this. The Alberta, now remember, I've just filed my lawsuit. The regulator, I found out years later, 5 years later, by freedom of information, Steve Wallace, the water regulator, edited the so-called Independent Research Council reviews of the water regulators, really lousy investigations. And what did they do? They ignored the damning ethane data. They didn't just do that. They altered our data. They said ethane was not detected, but it was. This is the University of Calgary and with the Research Council, this battle. They ignored the historic records on my well. They ignored Encana's 2003 test. They reported that the chromium at a concentration 1,000 times less than on the lab report. Best in the world science. And they also ignored that in Canada broke the law on fracture aquifers. And sure enough, they went 100 miles north. They avoided the damning data on the energy wells in our community. They took data from energy wells fracked much deeper to say there's no match. Carlos had already proven a match. And they blamed nature. They take our water away. They say our explosive water is safe. I'm going to take a drink. I get thirsty when I see myself hauling water. I go 45 minutes away, one way. This is my truck. 185 gallons to get water. I'm back home. This is Babbitt's brother Magic. He would always want to go with me, even on the hottest day. This is the water tower that replaced the one that blew up, and Canada promised the community 150. That cost almost 700,000. Are they winning financially? I lost my storage room and laundry room. The government paid for these tanks. I still use them. World Oil reported that gas migration can occur every time the seal of a gas-bearing zone is disturbed. That is with every frack. They don't just frack once, they frack again and again and again. Then they come back 2 years later because the production is so bad. And they're not making a lot of money, and they have to frack again and refrack again. So we served the legal papers on the parties, and then national news aired a tiny segment on my water and how bad the regulator treated me. In fact, that journalist, he's quite well known, when he saw my water explode, he swore on film. And right after that, Stephen Harper, Prime Minister, the ex-Prime Minister of Canada, his anti-terrorist squad was created, and they came to try to intimidate me and stop me. My lawyers and I think to stop me, make me drop my lawsuit. This is the view from my living room window. Here they come. This is my driveway. I'm taking pictures because I need evidence. And the big guy, he hears me clickety, clickety, click, and he goes, "You can't take our photograph, we are undercover." And I said, "Yes, I can. You're trespassing. They had no warrant." And even when they came, they still didn't arrest me or fingerprint me. They were at my house. They could have taken me away. So if it was natural, would they send the police? In northeast British Columbia and Canada's fracking, the frack sand caused a problem with equipment, and they had a massive sour gas blowout. The company didn't respond, the regulator didn't respond, the people had to rescue themselves. Best in the world regulations failed miserably. And Canada was to face criminal charges, and they bought themselves out of it with $250,000 in gifts. CEO of Schlumberger, we are doing it, fracking by brute force and ignorance. That's 2010, that has not changed. They are still experimenting. We are the guinea pigs. And so are our lands, our food, our water, our air, our health. Then I caught the regulator changing history. We're really quite talented in Alberta. This is my historic record on my water well that used to be on file with the water regulator. In 2010, I noticed that data was gone. So was all the other water wells in Alberta that had contamination. And they replaced it with other data that says gas present blank. They could see the lawsuits coming. And Canada intentionally fractured and contaminated our aquifers. Caltex and Crew up near Grant Prairie, Alberta in the north, they accidentally contaminated fresh groundwater. Did your regulator tell you about this one? They were perforating, they made a mistake, they perforated the casing in the wrong place. They knew that something was wrong, and they said, never mind, we'll just frack anyways. and contaminated the fresh water with gelled propane, the regulators continue to lie to us for over a year, so do the companies. Waste. What are they going to do with all the waste? There's a phenomenal amount of waste that comes with this. Drilling waste and frack waste. This is drilling waste. This is grainland in just outside Rosebud. They call it land farming. There's toxic metals in that, and BTEX. Massive amounts of water. This is right outside Calgary. Calgary was going to be fracked, and the oil and gas people there said, "No way are you fracking us." 200 strong in Oil Town, Calgary, protested with signs saying no. This is Cochrane, this is the community. They build these huge swimming pools to hoard the water. So there's the pool there and all the tanker loads. They don't heed the laws to protect water. They also don't heed the traffic laws. This is what Kimberly Milton was so upset about. This guy just pulled right out of this traffic, including the people taking the photo behind. That just slammed on the brakes. Massive road damages. Look at how straight our roads are. You imagine when the trucks get going, what's going to happen to your roads. In Quebec, where there's lots of curvy roads like you have, the tankers flip over. They flip over on our straight roads too, because they go too fast. Who pays for this? We do. You will. To pay for the damages. It's also dangerous. Road damages in Quebec. So to some of the legal. My first court hearing happens in Alberta, and Justice Barbara Beltois asks for a shorter statement of claim. I didn't want to be argumentative. I agreed to it. This was to cost me extra money, delay my case a year. And 2 years later in the Court of Appeal, the three judges complained because my statement of claim was too short. My lead lawyer actually told the judge that this would happen. And she volunteers to be case management judge, which I've since discovered. She said it would expedite matters and get my case moving forward quicker. All it has done is make sure my case goes nowhere. There's a case management call. I pay for these, but I'm not even allowed to listen in to my lawyers, and the defendant lawyers, and the judge. The defendants asked to move my case from the rural jurisdiction, so the similar thing here would be, let's say you have a lawsuit here in Malton. Let's say one of the farm's water got contaminated, and the defendants say, we want to move the case to Manchester. Why would they do that? Well, most rural people don't want to go to a big city, plus it costs more money. This is in Canada's office in Drumheller, which is the rural jurisdiction where my case is legally supposed to be heard. And Cenovus, the other accounting company, they've got an office right across. And the lawyers tell the judge, if the lawsuit is heard in Drumheller, we're not going to drive there. So they moved the case to Calgary. This tells me in Canada's controlling our courts. And not very long after that, these trucks don't have a problem driving out there. This is more drilling waste in the same field of cropland. Can you see that? This is not legal. This is the spraying, and this is, oops, made a little oopsie here. That's way overload. Did they fix it? No. So in December, the regulator, the energy regulator, files a legal brief. This is an official brief, and they've changed now in this brief from me being a criminal to me being a terrorist. No evidence, no hearing, I was not fingerprinted. They say that I can have my rights violated because terrorists have no rights, and they owe no duty of care to water or groundwater. They can do whatever they want. Gross negligence, you name it. Frack Focus. How many of you have heard about Frack Focus? No? That'll come. Some of you have, yeah. Well, Frack Focus, it'll be promised to you. Don't worry, you're going to get all the frack chemicals told to you. But it's a fraud. It's industry controlled. They only post the data 30 days after fracking. How can you properly test your water well for the chemicals they're going to inject if you don't find out until after it's done? They can keep trade secrets. None of the drilling, cementing, servicing, or acidizing chemicals are disclosed in this. So the January court hearing comes along in Calgary. The court is packed. My lawyers are there. I open the door in the winter morning, and look at who drove out into the country in Canada. They're preparing to frack another well within 400 meters of my already contaminated water well. And I believe in taking a stand. So I did not attend my own court hearing, even though it cost me a massive fortune. I got a witness to come with me. She took this photo. We spent the whole day. This is the Drumheller Courthouse. We spent the day in the waiting room. After it came out to the media and the defendants what I had done, because I didn't tell even my best friends. Because you know that banana noise you were all making tonight when you got here? And chatting and coffee, Christmas. And, well, I wanted that courtroom full of that noise. But the noise there was, where's Jess? Why isn't Jess in her own court hearing? So when my lawyers announced in court where I was and why I was taking a stand, this is not legally correct. The defendants could have said, objection! We're not supposed to talk about this kind of stuff. And the judge should have said, yes, agreed. But they all leaned forward. Where's Jess? They wanted to know where I was. But after they found out, they lied to the press, and the press reported it, that I had received special treatment, and they had given me live video feed of the proceedings. I saw nothing. But my impact of taking a stand had big effect, because my case was moved back to Drumheller. I had no sign. I had no press release. 2 women. That's a lot of power. Use your imaginations. Our imaginations and our love are the most incredible gifts we have, and they have a lot of power, and they're fun. I was terrified to do this, though, because it was scary. I didn't know what would happen. And I'm going to take a couple minutes here to tell a little side story that's kind of funny. So I'm sitting there really uncomfortable all day, and an RCMP officer walks in. Now remember, I've been ruled a terrorist. And I sat there going, oh no, I'm going to get arrested. They know they're coming to throw me in jail. Now comes the fingerprinting, right? And he's looking at me, and he says, oh, you're Jessica Ernst? I said, yeah, I am. Trying to get really small. My parents love you! And then he tells me, we shake hands, I get up, and he tells me that their water's contaminated. North of Drumheller. The police are affected too. Don't hate them. It's really awful. I was there today. I saw the tears and the hugs and the fury in some and the fear and we can't do anything. We can't stop. There's nothing we can do. There is a lot you can do. You just haven't figured out what it is you're going to do yet. It is infinite, the things you can do. Don't resort to violence, because then they squash us all. But there's a lot of things you can do. Many, many, many things. And the police are affected too. So when you speak to them, remember that they're human. They have families. And when you get angry at them, get angry about them to your best friend in private. Vent it out in a healthy, safe place. So Alberta Environment argues to have contamination removed from my claim. They say all the other water wells need to be removed from my claim. And the EU came out with a report in 2012 that wasn't a very good report, but they say that this statement was very important. 25 to 100% of the fresh water they're injecting is lost forever. And then the Harper government promotes my case management judge to Court of Appeal. He demotes Justice Neil Whitman from Court of Appeal down to Court of Queen's Bench, who volunteers to take over my case. I'm absolutely horrified by this. Another delay, more money lost for nothing. And I phone my lawyers. I tell them what's happened. They said, just don't worry at all. This happens all the time. When the judge is promoted or gets sick or something, they always finish their caseload. So we have a case management call that I'm excluded on, of course. And the judge says, no, not an option. She will not rule on what she heard in court. This is justice? Gerard Crotty, who was also appointed to the Research Council, gets appointed. He's a VP, previous VP of Encana, the polluter, the law violator. is now been made by the government the chairman of the energy regulator. And they remove the public interest mandate from the regulator. The Campbells have the best or the worst data of thermogenic methane, ethane, propane, butane, pentane, etc. in their water. Dr. Carlos has written that the gases coming into their water are from 1,700 meters down. The regulator studied their well for 8 years and then slammed the door shut on them. No safe water. And look, that's another frack crew. That's their living room window looking out at another frack crew coming to frack again. When you are fracked, they just frack you again and again and again. There's no buffer zone around a contaminated water well like the police put around their stuff. I'm still hauling water. I can't pay for repairs on my house because I'm paying for this lawsuit. I'm getting older. It's getting harder and harder for me to move that tank around. The Wonder Woman effect wore off. And just as Neil Whitman finally rules, my case keeps being delayed and delayed and delayed. And guess who the most guilty parties are? The judges. I watched the same judges rule in 2 or 3 months on other cases. Diana Downheimer was a frack health harm case in Alberta. Much more complicated preliminary matters in her case heard in court, and she gets every single time. She got a ruling instantly from the bench. In my case, they're taking 8 months, 7 months on tiny, inconsequential preliminary matters. What are these judges? Best friends within Canada? Like Stephen Harper was? Is probably. But he says I have a valid constitutional claim, a valid charter claim. But he says to prevent other Canadians from suing, I'm going to rule against her. Can't have people dressing up in their constitutional rights outfits. To frack us all, coast to coast to coast. In the Yukon too, they want to frack. They have to remove all the laws and regulations. They have to also take away all our rights. Contamination stays in my statement of claim. I can sue the taxpayer-funded water regulator, but I cannot sue the industry-funded energy regulator. Another contamination case by Pinoca. The son went for his mother to have legal advice. This is Glenn Solomon. He is the legal counsel for the energy regulator in my case. The landowner tape-recorded this meeting. They're learning. And he says, the lawyers know the companies are contaminating our water. He says, but again, most of these cases resolve. He's talking about my lawsuit. Okay, we damaged your water well. We'll just set you up with potable water through a tank system forever. Do you want to have a bath worried that your pump's going to burn out because you've run out of water in your tank? Or it's 40 below in a blizzard and you can't go get water? They've made $100 million. They don't care. Gag and settle, which I refuse to do. He was pretty rude in this session of legal advice. Said that my legal case was World War III. I'm stupid to do World War III. Yeah, maybe I am stupid, but I'm not doing it to get rich, and I'm not doing it to win a legal case, because I know I'm not going to win. I'm doing it because of you, and my people in my country, and Ireland, and Australia, and Argentina. And then he says, by the way, by doing that, you shut up. The regulator, we get them off our back. This is the most important part of the legal advice, and we get to do it again down the street. That is their intent with the gag orders and the settlements. So they can frack the first row, then the second row, then the second row, and the next, and all the way to the end, and they'll start here and frack all of you. And so, that's the all-company approach to these things. The lawyers know. And then Justice Whitman gives the Alberta water regulator another chance to throw my case out. This was absurd. Another year delay. More money lost for me. On nothing. These are preliminary matters that shouldn't even be happening. But something good came out of this. This is the Crown lawyer, the water regulator lawyer. These are my lawyers, and there's Justice Whitman. And the Crown lawyer says, but Your Honor, you have to throw her case out because there could be millions or billions of dollars worth of damages. Yeah, no kidding. Those are the leaking energy wells that have been reported in Alberta and British Columbia up till 2014. The companies don't have to report this. How many more leakers are there? What about the leakers they cover up? What about all the leakers around Fox Creek with those earthquakes causing more and more gas migration? That big oil and gas lobby group confessed in a one-page ad that yes, fracking had contaminated water in Alberta, and in some of the more infamous cases, their water could be set on fire. In the fall, Justice Whitman rules on my case. I've already said this, that I can sue the water regulator that's funded by the taxpayers, but I cannot sue the energy regulator. So I filed leave to appeal to the Supreme Court of Canada. They are fracking the caprock across the province. They are fracking the tar sands. This is bitumen oozing to surface in northern Alberta. They are injecting steam, same process as fracking. And the regulator and the company documented that they contaminated groundwater from that 10 kilometers from the seepage site, who knows how far from the injection site. They're fracking the caprock. Gas migrating in Kalmar, Alberta, into the park of into the school playground, right beside homes. The company fixed it, tried to fix it, and failed. It's a serious problem. Fracking kills. Jack Sean Isles was killed directly by fracking in northeast BC. There he is. The Supreme Court agrees to hear my case. They only hear 4% of civil cases in Canada. And then, law prof Alice Woolley, her paper she had published 8 years previous, suddenly in its entirety, the defamation gets published in the Journal of Energy and Natural Resources Law. Why? Is this to taint the justices against me? To have them see me as a terrorist before they even hear my case? Most of what's happened in my case has been pretty bad, but there have been some amazing things happening. One is, many people tried to stop me and silence me, including in my own community, because they wanted the money. They wanted the jobs, the prosperity, the promises. This is my community. My property's over here. Most of my town signed a petition to the Supreme Court of Canada in support of my case. I could not believe this happened. The justices hear my case. I was too stressed to go to Ottawa. I didn't go. It would have cost a lot of money, and I was pretty sure I would have fainted had I gone. To recap some of Stephen Harper's effects on my lawsuit, he created the anti-terrorist squad that came to intimidate and harass me. He appointed Justice Barbara Beltois to be to be Court of Queen's Bench judge. Then he promoted her to get her off my case. Then he demoted Justice Neil Whitman, and he appointed 7 of the 9 Supreme Court justices in my case. There's another lawsuit that's very important going on right now. The Supreme Court has not yet agreed whether they will hear it or not. It's the Redwater case. This case is of extreme global significance, including for you. Justice Whitman ruled, Redwater's gone bankrupt, and he ruled, normally in Alberta, the assets get sold or produced to pay to clean up, but the company's not cleaning up. In this case, the trustees, the money, the banks, the rich said, no, 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 we're taking the assets. You're selling off all the good, we're selling off all the good stuff, and the taxpayers of Alberta are cleaning this up. So he ruled the federal bankruptcy law trumps provincial law in the Redwater case, but ruled exactly the opposite about our charter. Our charter trumps even the Federal Bankruptcy Act. But he ruled the provincial law trumps our top law in the land. But this will be copied around the world. The waiting is just about killed me. The judges have taken such terrible lengths of time on such tiny preliminary matters. The Supreme Court of Canada, too. They were my only hope. I had never expected to get justice in Alberta. It's an oil province. But they took over a year on a super simple matter, and they didn't even give me a ruling. It took 2 years and 2 months of my life and a massive amount of money. And they gave me a 4-1-4 non-ruling. 4 judges said, no, I can't sue the regulator. 4 judges said, yes, I can. 1 judge, Rosalie Abella, said, not sure yet. And they say, I still have a valid charter claim, so I can't sue. They make me pay the regulator's legal fees. Lawrence Sosin, who is a dean of Osgoode Hall, our most prestigious law school in the country, wrote a scathing review, ripping the positions of all 9 judges. And they too smeared me. They published a defamation of me. Justice Rosalie Abella suddenly changes the regulator. They put in writing that I was a criminal, which they then put in writing that I was suddenly a terrorist. She puts in writing that, they found me to be a vexatious litigant. I didn't become a litigant until 2 years after the regulator banished me. What is the worst thing you can be called if you're doing a lawsuit, if you're a civil plaintiff? Vexatious litigant. It basically means you really don't have a lawsuit, and the judges and the courts can restrict you access. I believe that the Supreme Court of Canada did this to make you not listen to me, because I have no case. I'm just a vexatious litigant. I'm a nobody. But I also think they had a more nasty reason to do this. I think they wanted me to give up. And I nearly did. January, February, March, just devastated me. I was horrified. The Supreme Court of Canada is making stuff up out of the air. And not only that, they published it in their ruling and then also copied it in their summary, which they give to the press. Beverly McLaughlin, our Chief Justice, and 3 other judges called Justice Abella on this. They said in their ruling they saw no basis for this, but they didn't repeat that in their summary. And the summary went to the media, and the media published that I'm a vexatious litigant. My water is still too dangerous to flush toilets with. I use a composting system right here, wood shavings. I learned it from a man in Pennsylvania called Humanure. I put it outside with straw, and then later, once it's full, I let it sit a year, and then I put it around my trees. Magic sadly died, and I rescued Jem a few years later. I never thought I'd get another dog, but she needed a home. Oh yeah, you think I'd leave him out? I couldn't believe this when I read this. I watch what's happening over here. As busy as I am, I read your local papers. I read the big papers. I follow what's happening to you. So if you get really despairing, just keep in mind that I am watching you. Sending love. You can do it. I can do it. You can do it. So what, do you think he's telling the truth here? Then you're all laughing. There's no proof. He has no proof to say this. Decades of lies, decades of lies. Cahill and his colleagues published a very important paper from the University of Guelph, saying in it, potentially explosive methane gas leaking from energy wells may travel extensively through groundwater and poses a safety risk. This is really important. And our regulator has a secret report they will not make public, not even to the people living in explosive risk. In the cities in Alberta, there are wells leaking massive amounts of methane. And they even say in it, public health harm. This red dotted line, you at the back probably can't see it, but this line at the bottom, there's 0. This is the acute threshold of 10,000 parts per million methane, which is the determined health impact threshold. Have you all heard that methane is perfectly safe? It's not. It's never been proven to cause health harm. It does cause health harm. This report says so. And look at the wells that are leaking. 1 million parts per million, 390,000 parts per million, 700,000. Their threshold is here. And at 1,000 ppm, neurological effects. Is that what's happened to my hands? 2 years I breathed these gases venting from my taps. And I helped them vent with my silly hairpin. My dogs would pace my hallway all night long. And here, at 10,000, acute life-threatening. Some photos from their report. These have not been made public. So I thought, well, I'm coming over here, I may as well be a really bad girl and give you your money's worth, because it's a lot of work to come to a meeting like this and share with you what the regulator in Alberta the world, energy regulator. Parking lot. Right by a home. There's the well. Under an abandoned hotel. This is in a city. And look what they say to do. Methane vented on the roof. Methane extraction pump. What happened to Bruce Jack and the 2 industry gas and water testers with his extraction pump? They blew up. Methane vent pipe. Extraction wells. This is inside a church that's still being used. This is the readings inside the church. Those are outside. They won't make this public. In a park near homes. City of Airdrie, in a shopping mall. I was very nervous flying over here. It was not just stressful catching my planes and trains and all those things. This is the new international terminal at the Calgary airport. They did a $2 billion expansion sitting on an uncased, abandoned well. If that terminal blows up, who are they going to blame? Terrorists. You got it. Probably me. It'll blow up tomorrow when I'm here. Oh, Jessica Ernst did that. So are they upset about the leaks or the leaks about the leaks? Fracking kills again. This just happened. Charles Oba, father of 2, there he is during fracking. And Canada had another sour gas blowout, this one by Fox Creek, where the world record happened, earthquake. And Encana just got slapped by the ex-Encana VP-led chair of the regulator with a tiny fine. Why did they do this? They normally fine nothing for such things. I think many people in Canada are furious at the regulator and the Supreme Court of Canada for my ruling. I think they're trying to look like a regulator. This was a deadly incident. The regulator set up an emergency command post over 200 kilometers away. That's how dangerous that was. This is an oil and gas lobby group in Oklahoma. Hundreds, if not thousands, of wells are being destroyed by horizontal frack jobs. What else are they destroying? Schools, churches, caprock, aquifers, homes, lives, marriages. Your Blackpool Gazette. The decommissioning of our sites is an important part of the regulatory system, which we take extremely seriously. We get exactly the same words in Canada. And we reportedly now in Alberta alone have a $300 billion liability to clean up the oil and gas messes, with them taking the cleanup extremely seriously. They will not clean up. I can guarantee you that. This is their last big hurrah. They're going to frack and run. They're going to bankrupt and run. And with the Redwater ruling by the judge that took over my case, they're going to make it legal. Now I'm going to end with some photos. There's not going to be much talking in this. By Will Coop. He just was given the Hidden Hero Award. Took some incredible photos this year, and I asked his permission to share with you these photos. Think about the trucks hauling water to your frack sites and then hauling the waste out, as you see these. It's Fox Creek. The trucks run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Benzene has been proven to cause cancer. These are diesel trucks. Think of what the community is breathing. They buy and propagandize our children, our schools, our parks. They buy, bribe, and divide our communities. They intentionally and permanently contaminate our drinking water. These are water hoses, massive, thick water hoses. They go for miles. And it's hoarded in these big dams for fracking. This is in the north, northern Alberta and British Columbia. So you saw these type of big ponds that they were building in Calgary. This is now up in the bush with the water hoses. This is madness to put out that much energy to get the terrible energy out that they get from fracking. Water hose. Grincana, more. Very noisy and polluting pumps. The workers here are wearing masks. Are you going to wear masks in your churches, in your homes, in your shops? They've proven that the pollution from fracking travels hundreds of kilometers. It will not just affect the people next door to the sites, it's going to affect you all. Talismans, these are waste pits now, the frack waste, so think of this being trucked out. And they were caught, the regulator caught them and proved that they contaminated groundwater with their waste pit. It leaked and got into the groundwater. Another proven case documented. These are different waste pits. They're all over. This is a different one. They put this flagging to keep the listed species off, I think. So when these tankers tip over at your corners and crash into one of your cottages, and the frack waste spills all over your living room and covers you, you don't get flaggings. I bet you Third Energy hasn't given you any flagging to protect yourself with. Would you want your sons to breathe that air and do this job? Nobody has assessed the cumulative effects of this much water being lost permanently. This is Will's truck here. And look at the state of the lining. The regulators don't go check this. Look at this. They don't care. They don't care because they know the regulator will let them do what they want. And they'll do the same thing here. They will be no better here. There is no regulation that can be written by man or woman to make this industry safe. High pressure water line. This truck. These are massive. And a lot of these dams have been illegally built, reported to the regulator, they did nothing. Waste pit. And then there's me. They get the water for free. I have to pay for this 185 gallons. When you are fracked, there is no aftercare. Not even when you've spent almost $400,000 in legal fees going nowhere. Now my lawsuit against the regulator, the energy regulator, is lost. But I still have my lawsuit against Canada and the water regulator, and I am going to keep going. This is one of my favorite Japanese sayings: fall down 7 times, stand up 8. So when you think you can't keep going, take a rest, or crash, or fall down, cry, whatever you need to do, take a rest, holiday. Take up golf if you don't golf, dust yourself off, and stand up again. Thank you very much.